Welcome back to OddsChecker. I am James. He is Ben. We have the last UFC pay-per-view of the year coming up this Saturday, UFC 282. We have a new main event. We'll talk about that in a sec. But first, let's get into the main card here. Let me just get everything up and we'll talk about it. And you can see there, we have a new main event. It is Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev. It's supposed to be Jiri Prochazka, Glover Teixeira. Jiri Prochazka gets injured, serious shoulder injury. He vacates the title, and now we have a vacant title fight between Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, which was the co-main event, 3 rounds. Now it is a 5-round main event. But we're going to start first in the flyweight division. We have, featherweight division. We've got Bryce Mitchell and Ilia Topuria. And you can see right now on OddsChecker, Bryce Mitchell, the underdog, about plus 115, plus 120. The favorite, Ilia Topuria. Ben, which side are you going on here?
It's a good fight to start out the main card. I've really been a fan of Bryce Mitchell. He's really like grinded out. He'll fight for your money every time. He'll always come out there and grind. He'll never, back down from a fight. I think that's going to be really important here because Topuria, he's an excellent, powerful striker. I think this is going to be a tough fight for Mitchell, even though he's coming off that win against Edson Barboza, Andre Fili before that. I actually believe this is a tougher matchup for him. Topuria can match everything he does on the ground. I think there's going to be some very high-level scrambling in this matchup. I do think it's going to go to the ground often. That's where Mitchell's going to want to take it. As far as strength, I think Mitchell is stronger, kind of more raw power. Reminds me like that farm boy type, even when he talks. Mm-hmm. But Topuria, at the same time, he has excellent high-level defense on the ground. I think he's going to be able to kind of reverse positions. But at the same time, Mitchell's very strong. If he can maintain that top control, I think he can grind out a decision here, maybe a late sub. But Topuria, he's going to have a massive power edge, in my opinion, on the feet. I think he could catch Mitchell in a way we haven't seen him get caught yet. He hasn't been knocked out yet in his career. I think we could maybe see him get caught by a strike from Topuria. So my favorite bet actually is 2 plays here. I like Topuria in round 1 or 2 by knockout, and I like Mitchell by round 2 or 3 by submission, because I think it's either a late Mitchell submission from all that pressure, or it's an early Topuria knockout.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You have 2 undefeated fighters. We should also mention that both of these fighters had different opponents at one point. It was supposed to be Bryce Mitchell and Evloev. Evloev gets injured or is out of the fight, and then Topuria was supposed to fight Edson Barboza, who Bryce just defeated. Now they're matched up against each other. The only thing I want to kind of warn people about is keep an eye on the weigh-ins. If you remember, Topuria has not fought at 145 in a while. His last fight that was scheduled at 145 was against Charles Jourdain. He had weight cut issues, wasn't even able to make it to the fight. So I would keep an eye on that before you go either way on this fight. I think it's very sort of important to sort of look at that. But yeah, I kind of think that the ground cancels each other out, and I think when it comes to standing, I think Topuria has an advantage. I will mention that Topuria didn't look that great in his last fight. Granted, it was up at lightweight, but he got rocked pretty good by Jai Herbert and almost lost that fight. That kind of slowed my brakes down a little bit on Topuria in terms of what he's able to do. But I think this fight stays standing. I think Topuria gets it done. You mentioned Bryce Mitchell being tough. I don't know if he gets finished here. I think I could see a Topuria decision or even a Bryce Mitchell decision in this fight. But if I have to lean, I give the edge to Topuria because of the power. I think he wins the decision here over Mitchell. And I think it's going to be a fight of the night, really competitive matchup. But I think Topuria's striking will be the difference in this fight. Okay, let's move along to the middleweight division. Another big fight and an interesting one in the middleweight division. We've got Darren Till taking on Dricus du Plessis. And right now, the odds makers on OddsChecker have du Plessis as the favorite, almost 2-1, but minus 175 around there. The comeback on Darren Till is plus 150, almost as high as plus 160. Who are you liking here?
The tough thing for me about Darren Till, I mean, I really like him as a fighter, but this is a tough matchup for him, and he hasn't looked that good lately. For me, it's kind of the question of, has Till hit his ceiling, or has he just been on a bad run? Because he's had a lot of bad luck. He's had injuries. He's had a ton of canceled bouts. I mean, he's now had, I think, 2 fights in the past 3 years. So he's been very inactive because of those injuries and stuff. But, I mean, that canceled bout last time with Jack Hermanson, now he's finally getting back in there. And he's coming off 2 losses, but they were to Derek Brunson and Robert Whittaker. I mean, those are 2 high-level losses. You can't necessarily blame him for losing those. And that was in the middle of being inactive, dealing with injuries. So I have a lot of sympathy for him. But at some point, you have to wonder, 1-4 in his last 5 fights, what's he going to come out and look like? I want to bet on him because I don't necessarily think he's hit his ceiling, and he's coming off a really few tough fights. He's been through a lot of adversity, and we're getting underdog odds on him here, plus 160. I like those odds on him. But I mean, Dricus, he hits very hard. This is going to be a tough fight for him because if he gets caught by that power, it's obviously he could get knocked out here. But I like him at these odds. I like that he's plus 160. I'm more comfortable backing him here as an underdog than if I had to put juice on him. He's actually 4-1 as an underdog in the UFC and 2-3 as a favorite. So just a little interesting nugget there. So I do like him in this fight. I think he bounces back. I just think he's had a really tough stretch. But I like him in this fight.
I get it. I totally get it. If Darren Till can find the form that I think even in that Whitaker fight, it was a good performance from him. He actually rocked Whitaker pretty good in that first round, and was in the most of the fight. But you mentioned that there the injuries. He's got a long layoff coming into this fight. He's not even 30 yet, and he's had so many fights that have he hasn't made it to because of injuries, because of so many different things. Not to mention the damage he's taken in certain fights. I know Dricus didn't exactly light the world on fire in that performance over Brad Tavares, but I think it's a case of two fighters going in opposite directions. And then you're right that, I mean, Darren has fought some exceptional competition. Brunson and Whitaker, two of the toughest guys you can fight in that weight class. I just think that Dricus, I think he's going to prove even more in this fight that he's the better fighter here. I think he goes out there and puts on a really good performance. And I think Darren Till is someone that, again, like I don't know what to expect. I think it's such a gamble to assume that we're going to find that Darren Till that say fought Stephen Thompson or fought, even fighting Whitaker. I don't even know if that Till's there because of the injuries and everything. I think the play here is the fight goes the distance, and here's why. I know Dricus has a couple finishes. Darren Till's very tough to finish. Whitaker couldn't finish him. Brunson finished him late in their fight when they fought, and that was a cardio thing where Till was basically just out of gas and couldn't do it. I don't think he makes that mistake here. He looks in pretty good shape. But Till doesn't have a win at 185 by finish. I don't know if that power translates to 185 like it did with some of the wins that he's had at 170. Right now, if you look at the fight goes the distance, you're getting plus money. I think that's worth a stab. It's only a 3-round fight. I know Dricus has been finished before as well, but that was at welterweight. Till last time he was finished was at actually he was finished by Brunson, but he was also finished at welterweight too. And I think a lot of that was the weight cut here. I'm willing to bet this fight does go the distance, so that's going to be my play. As far as my pick though, I think Dricus wins this. I think he is the new breed of middleweight. I think Till had his opportunity, and I think the injuries and everything else has slowed him down. Could Till turn back the clock? Possibly, but I just think it's a very risky thing to go on the Till side with the fact that he hasn't fought that Brunson fight that he had. We'll go quickly look it up. That I want to say that was in August of last year that he fought him, September of last year. So it's more than a year off. I don't know. That's concerning, man. So the pick's going to be Dricus by decision, and I will be playing the fight goes the distance in this one. So we'll see. Okay, next fight we're going to look at here is a switch up. So it's supposed to be Santiago Ponzinibbio, Robbie Lawler. Lawler's out of the fight. Ponzinibbio is a huge favorite. He's still a favorite here, but not to the degree that he was before here. It's only a 2-1 favorite here, minus 195 around there. Alex Morono plus 160 around there. Who are you liking here?
I know Ponzinibbio, he's 36. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. But that run he was on before going 1-3 in his last 4 fights was excellent. I mean, close to a title shot. I mean, for a welterweight, he has tremendous power. 15 knockouts in his career, and he had quite a few in that run. I think it was 8 fights he won in a row. It might have been 9. But I think we're going to see a little bit of vintage Ponzinibbio here. And I say vintage because he's 1-3 in his last 4 now. Getting up there in age, but I still think he has enough left in the tank for this one. Morono is not coming into this fight with a full camp, and I think that is very important against someone like Ponzinibbio. If he had a full camp, I would really be more tempted to take him here. But 1 week, I think, was the notice for this fight. That's a tough fight to come in on in front of a rowdy crowd, and you have a guy with power at welterweight like Ponzinibbio. I think he's the more dangerous fighter. I think he's going to be able to just overpressure him. He has plenty of experience in this fight, and he's been fully prepared for this fight now. He had a full camp. Obviously not the same opponent that he was preparing for, but I don't really think it matters in this one. And I know he has some juice, so I'm actually going to look to take him by knockout for plus 200 here, kind of knock off some of that juice. I think that's a pretty good line here against someone who I definitely think he is capable of knocking out. Morono was knocked out by Chaos Williams. He hasn't been knocked out since then, but I mean, if he can do it, I think Ponzinibbio can.
Be careful about this fight. I'm going to warn people. You mentioned that run that Ponzinibbio was on. He had a number of injuries. The fight that people remember him for, this probably his best performance, was the Neil Magny fight. He finished Neil. He looked like he was destined for a title shot. But remember, he had injuries, and I think he got COVID and all these other things that it kept him up for the cage for a while. he hasn't really looked the same. I know that fight with Jeff Neal that he had was very close. I know he also got that win over Miguel Baeza, but he also got finished by Li Jingliang, who's not exactly finishing everyone, right? Like we've seen him go the distance a couple times. And the other key thing here is this fight's a catch weight. It's 180. So despite the fact that Morono had a short camp, he doesn't have to cut those extra 10 pounds. I think that's a big factor in this fight where Morono's not having to kill himself. Here's another thing. I mentioned the Jeff Neal fight. Who's a teammate of Jeff Neal's? Alex Morono. His coach, Saif Sayu. They have the game plan to beat this guy because Jeff Neal did it last year. I think there's a lot of reasons to look on the Moreno side here, and I think getting them close to 2-1 as a 2-1, almost a 2-1 underdog here, I think there's some value. Now, with that said, I do think Ponzinibbio is the better fighter on paper. I think you could have argued Ponzinibbio beating Jeff Neal in that fight, to be honest. I do think it was razor close. So I'm going to be picking Ponzinibbio, but I'm going to lay a little bit on Morono by decision. In fact, I think the fight goes the distance might actually be the play here. And I know I've said this in the last two fights, but you look at Morono, he had the one knockout loss to Chaos Williams. Outside of that, he's not been finished. So I think there's a possibility because it's only 3 rounds, because it's a catch weight, typically when guys aren't cutting as much weight, not susceptible to the knockout as much. I think we could see this go the distance. Not to mention Morono's got a really weird striking style. I don't know if that's something that Ponzinibbio could prepare for in such short notice here. So I'm going to pick Ponzinibbio to win, but I'm going to lay a little bit on Morono at plus money. I think there's definitely some value there just because, like I said, he's not having to cut the extra weight. He's got a teammate who's already defeated this guy. I think there's some reasons to like the Moreno side here. So pick's going to be Ponzinibbio, but I will be betting. I think there's some value for sure. I think it's a dog or pass situation from a betting perspective personally. So that's how I'm going there. All right, let's move along to the co-main event. It's Paddy Pimblett taking on Jared Gordon. And right now, Jared Gordon is the underdog, almost plus 200, plus 190 around there. The favorite, Paddy Pimblett, almost 3-1 odds here. Who are you going with here?
This is a really weird co-main event because in no normal world would this usually be the co-main event, but Pimblett is just such a fan favorite that he's obviously earned the co-main slot here. I'm a fan of him from a fighting perspective. If you're asking me to bet on him, I'm not a huge fan. He's scary to bet on because his defense isn't necessarily the best. He kind of just goes all out, and he does have power on the feet, but from a technical standpoint, I don't know if he's quite there yet. I'm not saying he's a bad fighter, but he's still young. He's still coming up in the UFC, only 3 fights in, and he has 3 finishes. So you can't really knock him for that. But at the same time, in that last fight with Jordan Levitt, Levitt had a very good first round. Some people say
he won the first round for sure.
Yeah. He won the first round. He had a really good first round, and to come out in London where the crowd was backing Pimblett, that was quite a good round for him. If Gordon can do that for 3 rounds here, I think he can win a decision. That being said, Pimblett with the defense and everything, what happens if Gordon's a very good striker on the feet? I think a lot of people are underrating him in this spot, and I think that it is also important when you mention the fact that Pimblett's last 2 fights were in England. And the fight before that was in the Apex. So he has not yet fought in front of a crowd outside of England, which I think could play a part here because Pimblett really plays off the crowd. Going into that Levitt fight, he came out and he was hyping up the crowd. He ran out into the crowd afterwards, and he really feeds off the crowd. So I think that might play a little bit of an effect here. I don't know necessarily because the crowd will probably be backing Pimblett either way. But I think this is a sneaky fight where Gordon could show up better than most people expect. I think that the popularity of Pimblett is definitely playing a factor into this line because Gordon is no slouch and he can definitely expose some of those defensive holes that Pimblett has. So my pick is actually me Gordon here. I like the underdog upset in this fight.
I get where you're coming from. To me, it's you mentioned it right there. Paddy Pimblett's in the co-main event. He's not a ranked fighter. This just doesn't happen on a pay-per-view. This is crazy if you think about it. I don't even remember the last time someone has got a co-main event and granted there was an injury, so they had to switch things up, but I don't remember the last time a fighter that was not ranked is getting a co-main event treatment, getting co-main event treatment in the co-main event. Because of that, I think the UFC is being very strategic with how they're matching up Paddy Pimblett, and I kind of see where they're coming from here in the match, but I'll talk about that in a sec. But he's getting the Sean O'Malley treatment. Prior to Sean O'Malley fighting Chito Vera, he fought opponents that were favorable, very much favorable to his fighting style, and I think the same thing applies here. What's Paddy Pimblett's biggest weakness? It's his striking defense. We saw him get hit in the Luigi Vendramini fight. We saw him get hit in the fight after that. He doesn't have to worry about that with Jared Gordon because Jared Gordon's last knockout win was actually his UFC debut in a fight that he missed weight against Mitchell Quinones. He's not a power puncher. So I don't think Paddy really has to worry about that, which means he can take more risks. And Paddy's got good striking himself, but like I said, like if he fights a good striker, like if he fought an Arman Tsarukyan or Fiziev, there's no way I would think that Paddy wins that fight. But against Jared Gordon, who's getting up there in age, who's not really known for being a power puncher, I think Paddy has some advantages here. He's got the height and reach as well. And again, the UFC's not dumb here. They're not going to put him in a co-main event for him to lose. I think there's a reason they're putting him here. Again, I'm not calling like fight fixing or anything crazy like that, but they are giving him a favorable matchup here. I think there's a reason he's fighting Gordon compared to some of the other lightweights. There's a reason he's not fighting, say, a Terrence McKinney, for example, right? So I factor all that in. I also factor in that Pimblett's younger. He does something special. I think there's one play here. I mean, I get betting on Gordon in the sense that if Paddy can't finish him, then things get interesting when it goes to the scorecards. But I think the one play here, if you like Paddy, is the inside the distance. I wouldn't even go knockout or submission because going that way, because you never know. Maybe he knocks Gordon down and then submits him. I'm not sure. I think the only play here is the Paddy Pimblett fights inside the distance here. I don't think it's going to be in round 1. I think it might be round 2 or round 3 here. Again, you got some interesting odds here. You could sort of check and see, which way this one's going to go here. But personally, I'm just staying away from this fight. This looks like a bit of a trap, like you said. Like I don't think Gordon poses a lot of threats, but I also don't. And also, side note, there's this big thing going on with Paddy Pimblett in the media, which I think is a big distraction as well. So maybe that plays a role in the fight. But I just think I think Pimblett likely finishes Jared Gordon at some point. But I'm also worried that Gordon's so durable that maybe he does go to the scorecards here. So I'm going to pick Paddy. I can't pull the trigger on Gordon just because I think that's a big if he's able to neutralize Paddy there. Now, so that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I will say, Pimblett, what you said with the stylistic matchup there definitely plays a factor here because what is Gordon's last loss? Grant Dawson. It was by rear naked choke. Paddy Pimblett, I mean, if there's one thing he's very, very, very good at, it is taking opponents' backs. I mean, Leavitt, he's good on the ground, and he had dominant positions in that fight and was still reversed and submitted early in the second round. So Paddy, I mean, he just looks for the back and he gets it often. So I definitely think if there's an angle there, I would say I lean towards Paddy Pimblett submission if I was going to bet on him. And that might honestly be a good middle spot because he's plus 230 by submission. And then on the other side, I agree. Gordon's not a power puncher. I think if he does pull off the upset, it's going to be by decision. And he's actually plus 500 right now by decision.
See, so that is tempting. I didn't know it was that high, but yeah, that's I mean, that's kind of a good point. Just quickly on Gordon, and as far as him, the submission thing, the only issue is Gordon's been knocked out a number of times. Now, granted, it's Diego Ferreira, it's Charles Oliveira, but you still got to be a little bit worried about that. That's why I'm a little hesitant to go the submission route, but you do bring up a good point that Paddy does have a good ability to get a fighter's back. So we'll see. Anyways, interesting fight for sure. We're going to learn a lot about both fighters on Saturday night. Okay, let's get to the main event. Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev. So what's so interesting about this is that they originally signed for a 3-round fight, like I mentioned off the top. Now it's 5 rounds. It's for the title. This is Jan Blachowicz's last shot at getting a title shot. Right at his age, he's pushing 40. Ankalaev's only 30 here. And right now you can see Ankalaev a big favorite here. Some books having him almost 4-1 odds. Most books having him 3-1 odds. Are you going with the odds here, Ben? Who are you going with?
Oh man, I think at the end of the day, I'm going to take Ankalaev by knockout. It just seems like the obvious pick to me. I know a lot of people are going to be on that. I probably won't bet it but for the sake to pick it, I'll probably take that because if Blachowicz is going to win, it's probably by submission in my eyes. That's what I see as his path to victory at his age. I know he has more he has much more 5-round experience, but I think Ankalaev is going to bring a lot of more pressure to him. And if this goes to a decision, Ankalaev likely won 3 of the rounds. Mm-hmm. So if Blachowicz wins, it's going to be by submission. And you're asking him to submit a Dagestani. I know Ankalaev isn't the typical Dagestani. He's more the striker and the grappler, but he still has good defense. I don't see him getting necessarily submitted, even though Blachowicz is powerful. He also has good striking. But Ankalaev just feels better wherever this fight goes in my eyes. And he's younger. He's only 30 right now. Yeah, which feels young for light heavyweight. So I just see this as Ankalaev's fight. He feels like he's in his prime right now. Doesn't seem like he's being stopped right now. I know, and he's fought some very hard hitters. He fought Kudalaba. He fought Thiago Santos. And granted, he was knocked down in that fight, but he didn't get knocked out. He came back, won by decision. He's fought Volkan Ozdemir. He's fought some very hard hitters. So I don't necessarily see him being finished in this fight. So I think the only thing I'm going to play here is Ankalaev to win by knockout, just to knock that juice down. He's minus 300, but he is actually plus 120 right now to win by knockout. I think that line is going to end up minus money with some juice by Saturday night. So that's probably my play.
Interesting. Okay, we're kind of on. I mean, I am picking Ankalaev as well. I want to say that right off the top here. I think that's pretty obvious. But I kind of see this a little bit differently. Like, I think if Jan wins, it would be by knockout. Ankalaev has been submitted before by Paul Craig, but Paul Craig's this anomaly in the division. He's submitted Jamal Hill. He's submitted so many fighters. He'll lose a fight, most of it, and then come back and win. And that's what happened with Ankalaev in that fight. I think if Jan, like, we see who Jan's knocked out. He's knocked out Dominic Reyes. He's knocked out Corey Anderson. He's got that Polish power. That's one of the weird things about him at his age, is he's still getting knockout wins, which is crazy. The thing with Jan that I'm so confused with is, like, what are we going to get? Like, we haven't really, like, he got so dominated by Glover in that fight. And I don't know, was it an off night? Like, like, I still don't know what the deal is, or is it him on the decline? And then the last fight, same thing. It's like, yes, he won, but it was via injury. Rakic won that second round. Jan won the first round. Who knows how that fight was going to go if the injury didn't happen to Rakic? So I think there's still some question marks there on Jan and whether he's, back, or he had just like a bad night or whatever. And then with Ankalaev, like, most of his fights, I think he plays it a little bit safe. Like, you talked about the Thiago Santos win, wasn't able to finish that fight. The only guy that he's finished recently, I mean, he beat Smith, but again, an injury situation. So it's a little bit tough to say. What I sort of get from Ankalaev is that when he gets that step up in competition, it tends to go the distance with him. You look at the two wins that he had prior to that were by finish, were the same guy, Kutsalava, who's barely holding on to a UFC job right now. So I kind of see this a bit differently. I think if Ankalaev wins, it might be by decision, and you can get this at plus 215 right now. I think that's worth a stab. The only thing is if Jan tires out, but this is a guy who has 5-round experience. I don't see a situation where he gasses and then Ankalaev gets the finish. Ankalaev's also, he does have power, but I don't think the type of power of, say, like a Glover or some of these other guys in the weight class here. So I'm going to throw a little bit on Ankalaev by decision. I still like Ankalaev here because I really think he has more ways to win this fight. Whereas Jan, I think it's a puncher's chance. He could do it. I mean, I think the fact that it's 5 rounds does favor Jan, not only with his experience, but the fact that if the fight goes longer, he has more of a chance to land that big knockout punch here. Because I think between the power, between the two of them, I think that goes to Jan despite his age and everything. So I think likely what happens is Ankalaev wins a decision, and at plus money, especially at plus 215, I think that could happen. So that's probably going to be my only play here is in this fight anyways, is that I'm not even going to bet Jan by knockout, just because we've never seen Ankalaev knocked out, and I don't think that happens on Saturday. So the pick's going to be Ankalaev to be and new 205-pound champion. So there we go. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have one more card left next week, and then we're out of here for the rest of the year. Again, thanks to our audience who's been tuning in every single week. I hope you guys cash those bets on Saturday for the last pay-per-view of the year. For myself, for Ben, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you guys next week, and hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys soon.